We now want to look at finding the slope and finding the equation of a line. So the formula that we use for finding the equation of a line is y is equal to mx plus b. Remember that m is the symbol that we use for the slope, and b is the symbol that we use for the y-intercept. The y-intercept is the point where the line or the graph crosses the y-axis. So with that in mind, let's look at our first example. Our example says to find the equation of the line between the point 45 and the point 10. Now, if you remember that this is the equation, or these are the points that we looked at in a previous example where we calculated the slope. So we already know that for this particular problem, that the slope of the line is going to be 5/3. So with that in mind, we're going to take the equation of a line, which is y is equal to mx plus b, and we're going to plug in three things. We're going to plug in our slope, so we're going to plug in for the m, and then we're also going to plug in an x value and a y value. So let's begin by plugging in our slope. So in place of the m, I'm going to put my slope. Now for the x and the y, we can use either point. I'm going to go ahead and use the first point, which is the point 45. So in place of this x, I'm going to put the x value in my point, which will be 4. And then in place of the y, I'm going to put the y value in my point, which will be 5. Now our goal in doing this is to come up with a solution for the b value that we can then plug into our function. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to do some multiplication to begin with. So I'm going to multiply 5/3 times 4. And you can use your calculator here if you would like. Remember that a number that doesn't have a denominator is over 1. And to multiply fractions, we multiply the two top parts of the fractions together. So 5 times 4, which will be 20. And then we multiply the denominators together. So 3 times 1 is going to be 3. And then we have plus b. Now our job is to solve for b. And so in order to do that, we're going to subtract the 20/3 from both sides of the equation. So on this part, this will cancel out and that'll leave me just the b. And now I need to figure out what 5 minus 20/3 is equal to. So the easiest way for you to do this is probably going to be to put it in your calculator, but if you don't have that option, then you're going to need to take the 5 and write it with a denominator of 3. So you need to come up with a fraction that is equivalent to 5 that has a denominator of 3. So I could do that by writing it as 15/3. Okay, so I'm going to put that right here, and I want you to kind of think about that just for a second before I erase. 15/3 is the same thing as 5. 15 divided by 3 is 5. All right, so I have 15/3 minus 20/3, which is going to give me negative 5/3. So once we know the b value, we can then go back to our format for our equation of a line, which is y is equal to mx plus b. We're going to put our m value in, so 5/3 times x, and then we're going to put our b value in. So our b value is negative 5/3. And in doing that, we have our equation for our line. Okay, so let's sort of summarize what we did, and then we're going to try another example. So the first step is to find the slope. We did that on a previous problem. The second step is to find the b, and then the third step is to plug in. All right, so let's try this again. We're going to use the other problem that we worked previously. So we want to find the equation of the line between the point -3, -2, and -1, 2. Now again, we've already worked this part of the problem out, so the first step is to find the slope. But if you look back in your notes, we did this in the previous presentation, and we found the slope to be 2. All right, remember the second step is to find the b value. So I'm going to take my equation, y is equal to mx plus b. I am going to plug in for the slope, so I'm going to put a 2 in for the slope. Then I'm going to plug in an x value. So one of my x values would be -3. And then I'm going to plug in the corresponding y value. So the y value would be -2. And then we're going to simplify. So I've got -2 is equal to 2 times -3 is -6 plus b. Your job is to get the b by itself. So we're going to need to add 6 to both sides of this expression. So this one is a little easier than the last one because we don't have fractions. So -2 plus 6 is going to be a +4. It's going to cancel over here, leaving me the b value of 4. So that takes care of step 2, finding the b value. The third step, remember, is to go back to the format of your equation, y is equal to mx plus b. Plug in the m value and plug in the b value. So I have y is equal to, the m is 2, and the b is +4. And so now we have the equation of the line. Okay, we're going to do one more example. We're going to do this one kind of from start to finish. This is a new example. We want to find the equation of the line containing the points -714 and 1120. So remember that our first step is to find our slope. So I'm going to write my slope formula down. And just to make things easy, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to label my points so that I don't make a mistake in plugging things in. So the -7 and the 14, that's my first point. So this is going to be the first x and the first y. The 11 and the 20 is my second point. So this will be the second x and the second y. And now I'm ready to plug in. So in place of y2, I am going to put a 20. In place of y1, I'm going to put a 14. In place of x2, I'm going to put an 11. And in place of x1, I'm going to put a -7. So 20 minus 14 is going to be 6. The denominator becomes 11 plus a +7, so that's going to be 18. This fraction will reduce to 1/3 because both the top and the bottom are divisible by 3. So we have a slope value of 1/3. That takes care of the first step, finding the slope. Remember, the second step is to find the b value. So we're going to take our format of our function, y is equal to mx plus b. We're going to plug in our slope. So our slope is 1/3. We're going to plug in an x value and a y value. It doesn't matter which set you use. I'm going to go ahead and use the first set. So in place of the x, I'm going to put -7. And in place of the y, I'm going to put 14. And then your job becomes to figure out the b value. So I'm going to have 14 is equal to, remember that this -7 sits over a 1. We multiply across the top and across the bottom. So 1 times -7 is -7. 3 times 1 is 3. So in order to get the b by itself, we're going to need to add 7/3 to both sides of the expression. So I'm going to squeeze it in right here. We're going to add 7/3, and we're going to add 7/3. And so it's going to end up canceling over here. And so now I need to figure out what 14 plus 7/3 is equal to. In order to add them together, we're going to need them both written with a denominator of 3. So I need something over 3 that is equal to 14. Well, 14 times 3 is 42. So if I wrote this as 42 over 3, that's going to be the same thing as 14. 42 divided by 3 is 14. So with that in mind, when I add them together, 42 plus 7 is 49, and the denominator stays at 3. So I have 49 over 3 is equal to my b value. And then finally, remember step 3 is to take your formula and plug in your slope, your m value, which is 1/3, and plug in your b value, which is 49 over 3. And now you have the equation of the line through those two given points. So remember your 3 steps. Find the slope, find the b value, and then plug them in.